Welcome to Women and Resistance, a powerful podcast where we honor the courage, resilience, and revolutionary spirits of women across the globe. Hosted by Fubara Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, we uncover untold stories of defiance against systemic oppression. Whether colonialism, racism, sexism, or economic injustice. From historic icons like Winnie Mandela and Fannie Lou Hamer to today's trailblazers, we shine a light upon those shaping a more just world. This is a call to honor the past, embrace the present, and build an empowered future. Yes, greetings. Yeah, welcome to the premiere episode of Women and Resistance. And I'm one of your hosts, Adesoji Iginla. You know me as the host of African News Review here on Adesoji Speaks. But tonight, I'm honored to have someone from who I consider a sister from another mother. She's an advocate. She's also the host of Rethinking Freedom. Fubara Eneli Esquire.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be in this space with you. And I'm so excited about what we're going to be doing with Women and Resistors. I'm so excited. So thank you for this opportunity.
Okay. That said, yes, you were going to say something with regards to our champion of resistance tonight, Billie Holiday. Who is she? And could you just give us a brief introduction as to who this enigma is?
An enigma is the right word for her. So let me just give a little bit of background as to how I got introduced to Billie Holiday. I actually was born here in the United States of America, but I was raised in Nigeria. And one year, my father traveled to the UK and he came back with a VHS tape. And it was a recording of Diana Ross. And I think it may have been her performance at Caesar Palace or whatever. And so I became this huge, I think I was 8, something like that. But I became this huge fan of Diana Ross. And then as I started to collect her albums, she had a whole album that was Lady Sings the Blues. And she's singing all these songs. So I'm doing a deeper dive. And that's how I found out that she was singing Billie Holiday's songs and that she had acted as Billie Holiday in a movie. And that's how I got introduced to Billie Holiday. But it was actually through Diana Ross, who recorded her music because she actually was featured in a movie about Billie Holiday. So this woman, Billie Holiday, she died at age 44. She died all the way back if we can call it all the way back, in 1959. And yet today, there's still so much about her. Another movie was just made about her by featuring Andra Day just a few years ago. I want to say 2021. So what is it about Billie Holiday? And I would say that it's really the fact that there's so many facets to her. And although most of us may have been introduced to her as this tragic life story, cut down in her prime, the fact that she endures beyond so many other jazz artists and legends, if you will, shows that there was so much more depth to her. And I'm hoping that today we can really talk a little bit more expansively about Billie Holiday and not just the salacious parts, although the salacious parts were part of who she was. Yes. So I don't usually dress like this. I got this flower simply because Billie Holiday always wore gardenias in her hair.
Yep.
And you won't believe how many florists I called today to see if I could get gardenias. And there's a story behind how she even started wearing gardenias.
You care to tell us that before?
Sure. So Billie Holiday is in, I guess, her dressing room, wherever it was she was getting ready. And she's curling her hair. And she ends up, Black women who've ever had to use a curling iron or even a hot comb, you can, if it's too hot, burn your hair. So she actually burned her hair and she had a clump that was kind of missing. And she had to go on stage. So between her and whoever was assisting her, there was someone selling flowers at the door. They had gardenias, and Billie Holiday pinned the gardenias in her hair. It was such an iconic look. Everybody loved it. She made it part of her signature look. That and, of course, the red lipstick, which is why my lips are red.
Okay. That said, a question would be, how did a woman with no formal music training become one of the most influential voices of the 20th century? And what made her a U.S. government target? But I suppose the point to start would be, who is she? How did we come to know of her?
Well,
so what's her background?
What? If you ask who Billie Holiday is, it just depends on which book you're reading. To have her tell it, and let me see if I brought her book here with me. Her book, Lady Sings the Blues. Do you have that one? I'm looking around here because I've got so many of her books. But in her book, Lady Sings the Blues, Billie Holiday tells this story about her life, which is, some would argue, different from the truth. She talks about her mother having her at age 13, coming from a good home, and, just happened to fall in with this guy who also was a musician. And that her parents eventually married, and she lived with her parents for a while before her father went off on tour because he played with a band, and then he ended up
jazz band.
Yes, he ended up divorcing her mother and then marrying this other lady. That's a story that Billie tells.
Doesn't rhyme with.
Yes. The truth is, she was born Eleanora Fagan. She was born to Sadie Fagan, and her father is Clarence Holiday. And she talks about in her book about her father being shipped off to war and taking in so much poison gas that she said it was a great thing he wasn't a trumpetist and he learned how to play the guitar. He played the guitar and the banjo because his lungs are so shot from what he was exposed to. He would not have been able to be great, as a trumpeter or being on the horn. But she was born Eleanora Fagan. Her mother was actually not 13 when she had her. Other accounts say she was closer to 19, and her father was 17.
Younger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Her father was strict and her stepmother, and they didn't appreciate the fact that she got married, that she got pregnant out of wedlock. And so they kicked her out of the house. And so though her mother and her grandparents lived in Baltimore, she actually was born in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And the reason she was born in Philadelphia is her mother went seeking a place where she could make some kind of living, support herself. And one story is that she was actually cleaning the floors in the hospital of Philadelphia so that she could then pay her way and be able to have her baby there. But they ultimately returned to Baltimore. And then again here, the story goes up and down depending on who you're listening to. But we do know that Billie lived more with her aunt Ida and her grandparents than she did with her mother in her early childhood, and that she was beaten quite a bit by her aunt, not treated very well. We know that she was a tomboy and that her father supposedly nicknamed her Bill. But we know that Billie actually came from an actress, a white actress that Billie Holiday loved. Billie Dove. And so she wanted to be called pretty, and she wanted to feel very feminine, and she liked Billie, that name. And so she took Billie and then her father's last name, Holiday, because she was always trying to connect herself to her father, because one of the ways her aunt would insult her is to say she doesn't have a father. And we know that at age 10, one of their neighbors actually raped her.
Mm-hmm.
His name was, I believe, Wilbert.
Yeah, Wilbert. And he
Wilbert
got
Rich.
He got 3 months.
Yes. And so her mother, they reported the rape, and while he got 3 months, she got sent to the Catholic House of the Good Shepherd, run by nuns at that very young age. And in her biography, Lady Sings the Blues, she talked about some really horrific things that happened there, including being locked in a room overnight with a dead girl, and just the ways that they shamed her. There are other parts of the story where she talks about her mother bringing all this fried chicken and boiled eggs and all of that. that you can see that she probably was just embellishing and making
Embellishing a
herself
lot. Yeah.
feel a
Yeah.
lot better. So she was basically locked up at age 10, being punished for being the victim of sexual assault. No counseling, no, we're so sorry this happened to you. She got victimized again. We know that she did get out early because initially she was supposed to stay there till she really she turned 21. But her mother was able to fight and get some legal assistance to get her out of that place. We know that she was a truant and she did not get past 5th grade education. Although she liked to read, she was also a boxer as a little girl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the boxing bit. Go on.
Yeah. So, she was this absolute enigma. But we also know that by the time she was age 14, she had been arrested for prostitution with her mother. She doesn't tell that version of the story in her own
Lady That
biography,
Sings. Yeah,
but there are other accounts of her life that chronicle that, and of course it's public record as well. Except that when she was before the judge, they claimed that she was 18 and not 14. And that was when she was sentenced, I think, to 100 days in the workhouse. So she was very well endowed and developed at a young age, and that always kind of brought certain attention to her.
On savory attention at the same time. Yeah.
What we do know, when you asked about how did this untrained woman become this legendary musician, this really genius, she always had a knack for music. She was always drawn to music.
Mm-hmm.
And according to her, the places that had a Victrola that could actually play music were mostly the quote-unquote whorehouses, the brothels. In fact, at that point in time, jazz was labeled whorehouse music.
Yep.
And so she would, whether it was washing steps with people's steps to their homes, they're basically serving as a maid. She would also work in these brothels initially because she said she just wanted to be around the music and listen to the music. And she was
eventually
very much
becoming
by Bessie Smith and Louis Armstrong. Of course, there are other sides of the story that her mother took her to a brothel and she was working with her mother at the brothel. And that's when there was a raid and they got arrested. She claims in her book that the reason they got arrested was, since we're giving tea and I'll give just a little bit of the salacious part, Billie got to a point where she said she only wanted white men to pay for her services. And the reason for that was that the white men had wives. And so they would, to keep it delicately, they would hit it and quit it and go home.
And go, yeah.
And she said, but that the black men would want to, like, all night long, and they were hurting her. And so it's not funny, but that's what she said in her book. And so that what happened was she actually rejected a black man who, had some influence and did not appreciate being rejected, because she says, no, not servicing any more black men. And that's how the police were tipped and they were raided the following morning. But so she fine-tuned her ear listening to the music of some of the greats. But also, she started to frequent, she said, if there was a dance, if there was any place that played music,
she was there.
She was there. And she was there listening. That, her family sometimes thought, she was just there to go and hang out with men or whatever. But it was really the music that had attracted her. And she kept honing her voice and her instrument. As a matter of fact, people likened her voice to a horn in terms of the range and what she was able to do, the instrumentality of her voice.
Yep. Okay, so there's a quote in one of the books, Her Life and Times, and the quote which is attributed to her is, "The streets were my school, and that's where I learned to survive." So even as a child, buttressing the point you make in terms of the music, listening to the music and what have you, and building a foundation of it, what would you say made her unique in terms of her delivery? Because at that time, yes, jazz, although we know it was restricted to, quote unquote, the unsavory aspect of town, but then people came to watch her perform.
Yes.
Because they heard there is this voice that you need. In one of the books, they put it, that there is this voice you need to experience, not listen to, but experience.
So in Harlem, in certain areas of New York City, that was definitely, especially after hours, the limousines, according to the stories, would just line up. They wanted to hear and partake of the culture. I think they're still doing that today. We don't like the people and we discriminate against them, but we want to partake of the culture. So to answer that question, how about I just share what some of her peers and others have said about her voice, what sets her apart?
Go on.
Teddy Wilson said her ear was phenomenal, but she had to get a song into her ear so she could do her own style on it. Duke Ellington says no one sounded like her. Bobby Tucker said, man, she had the greatest conception of a beat I ever heard. These are
great in their,
right?
accomplished.
Ella Fitzgerald said, we all wanted to be like her. Tony Bennett said she could take a song and make it her own. Billie didn't just sing the melody. She lived inside the song. Frank Sinatra said Billie Holiday could express more emotion in one chorus than more artists could in a lifetime. Maya Angelou said her voice was filled with life's bruises, but in every note there was also beauty and honesty and defiance. Like, you're not going to kill me. And I would like us to, at some point today, if we can, share some of the lyrics from Ain't Nobody's Business. Nina Simone said she sang as if she had lived every word, turning songs into confessions and confessions into anthems. Johnny Hammond, the record producer who discovered her, in quotes, said she didn't just sing the blues, she was the blues. Leonard Feather, a jazz critic, says Billie's voice was a cry from the heart, a sound of both suffering and strength. And Lena Horne said, listening to Billie Holiday is like hearing someone tell you the truth, even when it hurts. So for me, when I listen to Billie Holiday's music and what sets her apart, first of all, once you hear her voice, you know it's her voice. Like nobody sounds
very
Holiday.
Distinct. Yeah,
but
very distinct.
She has a way of hearing a note, saying a phrase, because her articulation was pinpoint, but in a way that just reaches into your soul and grabs a piece of you. Like she pulls you into the music. You can feel her heartbeat. That's how I feel when I listen to Billie Holiday. And so there may be other people who had stronger voices, other people who could scat better, other people who had, whatever that they may have. But capturing the essence of Billie Holiday and her voice, no one has been able to do it.
Speaking of capturing people with their voice, could you tell our listeners and viewers alike what she does when she's about to perform any of her classics? She has a way of setting the mood. What does she do? You are listening to Women and Resistance with Aya Fubara Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, where we honor the voices of women who have shaped history through courage and defiance. If you're finding these stories inspiring, take a moment to subscribe, share, and support this platform. Together, we amplify the voices that deserve to be heard. Now, back to the conversation.
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to and what phase of her life, because first of all, we know that Billie, and I don't know if people know this as much, because sometimes we think people just have raw talent. So you might have to pinpoint exactly what you want to cover here. But Billie had a lot of discipline. Like they say that she would sit with and rehearse a song, really hear it over and over again until she could now figure out in her head what she was doing. And when she sings a song, that Billie never sang the same song the same way twice.
That's the point I wanted to.
It was always because she improvised as she went along. So like a horn, when we see the jazz players improvising, Billie was constantly improvising with her voice. And that was one of the reasons that so many musicians loved to play with her, because you just did not know what you were going to get from minute to minute, but it was awesome. It was amazing. it was beautiful, but it was unique. And she wouldn't redo it the same way again. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, that's what I'm driving at. It's the point that when you go to her, like Hammond said, that you experience the music with her.
Yes.
Now, furthermore, would it be safe to say it was that uniqueness that made her a sore point to the government? Because if she could
Yeah, that was
capture,
the other part of the question they
yeah,
asked. So when you talk about Billie Holiday being raised on the streets, I mean, listen, 10 years old, you're already locked up. And then the discrimination, the horrors that she probably didn't share. She talked about women who in her book she called dykes trying to molest her even when she was locked up the first time and the second time. And again, I refer to being locked up with a dead body all night. I'm not a psychologist. I wonder what that does to the psyche, the psyche of a girl who was already a prostitute by the time she was 14, earning her living in that way, having already been a maid. There was a strength to Billie Holiday. There was a defiance of, you know what, I don't care what life,
throws at
what
me.
life hands me. I'm going to make something of myself. So she talks about, wanting the silk dress and the patent leather high heels and the fancy hat and all that. She wanted to be somebody, regardless of how humble her background was. And I think that is the defiance that allowed her to record that song, Strange Fruit.
Yeah.
As you know, and then you might want to expand on this, Strange Fruit was written by a Jewish man.
Yeah.
Some people may not know that. His name was Abel Meeropol. He was also known as Lewis Allen. He was actually he was a teacher. And when she got so it was written as a poem. When she got it, she wanted to record it as a song. And she went to her recording label, Columbia. And once they looked at the lyrics, they said, nope, we're not touching it. But she was insistent that she was going to record this song. And she ended up working with Milt Gabler, who owned Commodore Records. And he did the arrangement. And then she subsequently recorded Strange Fruit. And from all the research that I've been able to do, it was singing that song and the way it attracted attention that caused the FBI to now say, wait a second. Now, the FBI already had problems with jazz artists. They were after some of the jazz artists. It's rumored that some of the big jazz artists eventually became informants for the FBI. So, you have Charlie Parker, you have some others who they felt like jazz and drugs, heroin at that point went hand in hand, and whoring, so to speak. And so they were already after them in a way that they weren't after any of the performers who were also engaging. But, Blackness is always cool. And so in their minds, at least from what they've written, it was like it's Black people glamorizing this, making it cool, that it's causing the white, elite or whatever to flock to them. And it's creating problems in white America, so to speak. But in terms of the way they targeted Billie Holiday, it wasn't just because she eventually was abusing drugs. It really was this strange fruit and the story that she was telling with the lyrics of that song.
It was said that when she performed Strange Fruit, she would often ask them to kill the noise and the lights go out. And the only person that had light on them was Billie Holiday. And she would perform the song. And when the lights come back on, half of the people were in tears. Some people basically had to just get up and leave. And the more they listened to it, the more the word spread. And then the governments, started looking.
And she was telling a story that obviously America didn't want to have told. So if our audience will indulge me, I am not a singer. One time in my life, I could hold a note. That time has passed. But I'm going to just read a few of the words from Strange Fruit. Southern trees bear a strange fruit. Blood on the leaves and blood at the roots. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze.
As lynching.
Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. I would encourage each and everyone who's watching this to go and listen to Billie Holiday sing that, because I could not even begin to do it justice. But if you can imagine that scene that Adesoji just described, being in this arena, whatever room, all the lights cut, and she always starts without any accompanying music. So it's her voice.
Yeah.
And just these words. And even as I started to read it, just feeling this chill, because actually not even a 15-minute drive from where I am sitting right now, William Gentry was lynched here in Belton, Texas at age 18. So I can only imagine for people who were in her presence when she sang this song, what an impact that it had on people. And, you know, America is all about propaganda, and they did not want the truth told. And so the FBI came after her, and they hounded her for the rest of her life. They specifically instructed her to stop singing that song.
Yeah.
And she would not stop.
That's the first act of defiance in itself. And then they started throwing things at her, informants around her, so much so.
Informants, including her lovers.
We've not even gotten to the husband yet. That in itself is troubling. So we've spoken about her fearlessness in performing the song despite not just industry pushback, but also government pushback. Would you say the reason why the FBI went after her, and I have a quote from her, which is...
What do you think the reason is that they went after her?
I think at that time, you're talking about the fees. It's okay to have a problem, but to have the problem highlighted in such a format, knowing the power of sound, power of music. Recording then was not as we live it today, where people can just be in their own little silos and you have Spotify. You've got album, it comes on the gramophone. Her voice is so searing that it hits the soul, just like you described it. And bearing in mind, this is someone's lived experience. It's usually okay as long as people don't get to hear about it, which is one of the defining moments when Emmett Till's mom, again, refused to close the casket. Because for them, if she had closed the casket, you and I would probably never have seen that picture. So Billie Holiday giving her voice to Strange Fruit is essentially opening the casket of lynching. I mean, Ada B. Wells has already done it in the sense of chronicling it. But to have somebody play it over and over again, it's like, that sound that you don't want to get into your head. But then somebody keeps talking. And so for them, it's like, who is this woman? Make her stop. Make her stop. So
I think there are other elements to why she was also targeted. And if I can take a moment to just talk about what this woman did in her life, okay?
Okay.
So Billie Holiday, by age 18, had been discovered, okay? So 14, she gets arrested. She comes out. She's like not going to be beaten down. She actually was living with her mother, and her mother was really sick, and they were facing eviction the next day. And she goes into this spot, and they had a wanted dancer sign. They were hiring a dancer. She couldn't dance, but she was so desperate. She goes in and she says, "Hey, I can dance." I'm like, "Okay, try out." And she's messing up there, and the owner is like, "Hey, listen, get out of here." Pianist who became her accompanist for many years said, "Hey, can you sing?" Says, "Yeah." And right then she starts to sing. And he was so captivated by her voice that it was like, okay, you're hired on the spot. And that night she performed in the place where they performed. This is how they dehumanize Black women. You have patrons eating, drinking, whatever, sitting at tables, and you're singing. And the way you make your money is a patron holds out a dollar bill. And you have to pick it up with your thighs. So you're pulling your dress up and you're opening your thighs to like clutch the money. And if you're not really good at it, you might not be able to get the money. So they couldn't just leave the money on the table for you to pick it up. They couldn't just give it to you in your hand. You had to be dehumanized in that way. And it is said that there are lots of different reasons she started being called Lady Day, which came from her friend Lester. But people started saying, hey, she's a lady, because she absolutely detested having to debase herself in that way to get $1. And she ultimately wouldn't. And people started actually handing her her own money. But she was able to make enough money to then pay for her and her mother not to be evicted. So think of this young woman at 18. So I'm going to look at her musicology, if you will, in 3 eras. So you have the rise of a jazz icon. This was being 1933, because she was born in 1915. 1933 being discovered by record producer John Hammond. Made her first recording with Benny Goodman, including Your Mother's Son-in-Law and Ripping the Scotch. Those were her very first recordings. Between 1935 and 1939, she was recording extensively with Teddy Wilson and his orchestra, producing hits like What a Little Moonlight Can Do. What a Little Moonlight. Okay, I'm not going to try and sing. And Easy Living. Everybody go play Billie Holiday today. But here's the deal. She became a prominent figure in the Harlem Renaissance, in the vibe, in that jazz scene, playing at Savoy Ballroom, the Cafe Society, which was one of the first integrated nightclubs in New York. So Billie had influence. But when we talk about why did the FBI target her, right? 39, she records Strange Fruit. Politically charged song. The golden years of innovation would be the second phase, right? This would be 1944 to 47. At this point, she's no longer that nervous little girl. She has come into her whole womanhood, right? She starts to achieve mainstream success. Lester, her friend, dubs her Lady Day. Now we have the gardenia. She had this whole persona going. She was very sensual, but she was strong. But her song had this fragility as well to it, right? Lester Young, by the way, her saxophonist is, and who she called her musical soulmate. Between 1940 and 1944, she had signed with Decca Records. Now she did Lover Man and she did Don't Explain. There are all these tumultuous love affairs going on, married, divorced, all of that stuff. But what Billie Holiday also did was she broke barriers by performing with prominent white orchestras. At that time, no other Black female was doing that, right? Including Artie Shaw's band, becoming one of the first Black women to front an all-white band on tour. And they went all through the South, where she dealt with a lot of crap because the tour bus, her tour mates could go in the front door. They could stay in hotels, things like that. She would have to stay in the bus while they got food and brought it to the bus for her, things like that. In 1946, she performed in Carnegie Hall, solidifying her reputation as a powerhouse, as a jazz icon. All of this while she's singing Strange Fruit. So all the attention, I mean, if she was a little Miss Nobody singing Strange Fruit, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But she was a rising star, right? And so at this time, they start to hit her. By 1947, they arrested her for drugs. She goes to jail. They take away her cabaret card. And she did everything she could to get that cabaret card returned. And why wouldn't they give it back to her? It was a way of controlling her. Because you needed a cabaret card to sing. To perform, right? And the cabarets had, they always had alcohol. That was part of the appeal to people. And because she had this felony and they took her cabaret card, she could no longer perform in many of these places in New York, which was the scene. So she ended up having to go to other places outside of New York to perform just because they had taken that cabaret card from her. So 1947, the arrest for drug possession, which led to imprisonment. This obviously affected her income. But she gets back out. And between 1952 and 1959, when she died, she recorded Lady Sings the Blues, which also coincided with the release of the autobiography of the same name. She continued to tour Europe and U.S. And then, of course, her final recording in 1959, which was Lady in Satin. And then, of course, she gets arrested again. This time it didn't stick. And then on her deathbed, they actually came in and charged her with heroin possession. She was so weak, she couldn't even move. And they said they found heroin on her dresser. And these absolute pieces of trash, FBI human beings, and Louis McKay, who was her husband at the time,
yeah,
framed her, and she was actually shackled
to the
bed, and she died in shackles. But
having withdrawal symptoms. What did she say on her way out? She said something.
What did she say? Tell me.
When she said, "You don't want me to play the song, but your kids and your forebears will sing this song." Guess what we're doing today?
And she was prophetic in that. She was prophetic.
Talk about defiance.
Yeah. She was prophetic.
And so, I mean, we've gone into her motivation, her upbringing, her experience on the streets.
We touched just a little bit. This woman is an enigma. Just a little bit.
Can you give us some of the teas, as they would say? Some of the uncultured stuff she got up to? Because there's a whole raft of them.
Well,
for starters.
Uncultured, she wasn't, by whose definition? But go ahead.
Yeah, for starters, she wasn't discriminatory with regards to who she gave her love to. And I don't mean genders as well. So for some people, that time it would have been shocking, because in reading her biography, Lady Sings the Blues, it said that 70% of the stuff in there was actually left out because most people did not want to be associated with her. I mean, obviously the theme of the book...
Actually what happened in the writing of the book is when they had the first draft, if you will, there were certain people who were just like, we will sue if you put that in. They did not want that part of their life told, including like Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah was rumored to have been one of her lesbian lovers. And that would have ruined, I guess, or negatively impacted her reputation. And so there were certain things that were definitely kept out.
And Tallulah was also instrumental in helping her to stand up to her husband.
Yes, she was. But when you talk about the enigma and the mystery of Billie Holiday's life, there was a lady who was absolutely taken by Billie Holiday long after she passed away, Linda Kuehl, and she started to record all of these interviews with people who had lived and known Billie Holiday on an intimate level. And it's claimed she committed suicide, but her sister says her sister was killed.
Wow.
So, yeah, still. So it's interesting. Will we ever really know the reason why Billie Holiday was targeted by the FBI in the way that she was? And why even some of the her black male contemporaries who were using drugs just as she was, were not pursued. And there was a time when they pretty much were following her every step of the way. And so she devised a plan where they used a dog as a courier. It's like the dog would go out and then they would put the drugs in the collar of the dog, and then the dog would be let back in by the doorman. But yeah, I don't know that until all the vaults are open. J. Edgar Hoover was definitely obsessed with her, as was Aslinger as well. They wanted to destroy her.
Speaking of,
and unfortunately, there were some black men who it is claimed the FBI had things on. And so one of the ways that they could get off on whatever they had on them was for them to become informants on Billie Holiday. And so at a point, I think she probably was very paranoid, because it was just, who could she trust? So in terms of some of the more salacious things, yes, she had multiple lovers. She was married a couple of times with all of her relationships that I'm aware of were very abusive, with the ones with men in particular, to the extent that I believe when she performed, I think it was at Carnegie, she performed in broken ribs. Her lover had beaten her so badly she had to be taped up to be in that dress. She died penniless, although Louis McKay, who she was in the process of divorcing before she died. So the papers had been drawn up. She just hadn't signed them. ended up becoming her sole beneficiary. Yeah. And he left her royalties, her fortune, to his child by a different woman and to his then wife. And so the people that Billie Holiday loved, including her godson, who she was very, very close with, none of them benefited from her body of work and all these royalties all these years later. Of course, we know that she did abuse heroin. We know towards the end of her life, she was suffering from cirrhosis of the liver. She drank a lot. I almost, putting on this garb for Billie Holiday today, I almost brought a glass and I would have just put water in it. But, some of her iconic pictures at the end of her life, she's, in front of a microphone and she's got a glass of gin. And Audra McDonald actually did, you guys can catch this, it's a 2016 made-for-TV movie called Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. And Audra McDonald really showed, the whole thing is based on Billie's last performance in her last days before she, subsequently was admitted to the hospital. And you just see her, she starts off one way, and the more she drinks as her act goes on, the more her words are slurred, sometimes stumbles, all of that. But still, you're mesmerized by her voice. You're mesmerized by her wit. You could see this was just not a woman who was going to
give in easily.
Yes.
Now, looking at her life and sort of putting it in contemporary times, the people in the United States are living through interesting times. We've talked about her resistance, her defiance. How would you say some of what you gathered in research will translate into modern times? For one, she never quite had a community around her, although she had like Tatula, her mother, up till when she passed. There was another gentleman, the guy who wrote what's his name? Duffy.
William Duffy. Yeah, William Duffy and his wife. Yes.
Yeah, William Duffy and his wife. And yes, those three would be...
She had other people.
But those three come up for regular mention in all the books.
Those three do come up. So what I would say about, as we talk about women and resistance, again, it pains me that we see Billie Holiday mostly as this tragic figure, because I just see so much strength and resistance in her. Of course, we've talked about just the courage it takes to perform Strange Fruit and to speak up even when you're trying to be silenced. And what are we dealing with today? All across the globe, but certainly here in the United States, it's like the restriction of people's speech. You can't say this. You can't say Black History Month or whatever in places that you work. Anti-DEI, we're banning books, so on and so forth. And unlike many people who are just cowering, unlike many people who are folding like wet newspapers, if you will, Billie Holiday being hounded by the FBI, this Black woman being hounded by the entire FBI, stood her ground. I'm singing the daggone song. Do with it what you may. With the federal government, with the FBI, them saying, hey, give up whoever gives you your drugs. And then we would drop the charges or whatever. Until her last breath, she's like, I ain't telling you nothing. Whatever it is you're going to do to me, I am not telling you anything. Holiday famously responded, I'll die with my trumpet in my hand, refusing to be silenced despite all of the harassment and the legal troubles, right? And all the issues that they had caused for her. I don't know if people know that Billie Holiday sang at communist events. She sang at communist benefits for Benjamin Davis, who was a congressman from Harlem. Of course, we know that she broke barriers in segregated America. She challenged segregation during Jim Crow. Who is this little woman who thinks she can come and dictate any policies anywhere? But she spoke out against the mistreatment of Black artists, demanded equal treatment. And in places where that she was denied access and so on and so forth, she just never let that stop her from believing in herself. And so lessons for us today. I don't care what the barriers are. I don't care who's trying to stop you. Believe in yourself and keep going. And whatever you have had to deal with, gather that up and try to use that to power yourself on. Now, could we say, while she was weak to have used drugs and so on and so forth and alcohol? Yes. Is that a cautionary tale for all of us? Absolutely it is. So you're listening to this and you got a little alcohol or drug problem, go get it handled. But when you talk about the community, as close as she was with her mother, and she set her mother up, right, in terms of the eatery that her mother had and all of that. When she came out of jail and was down and out and couldn't
Mother
perform
turned on her as well.
and needed some money, her mother turned her down. Now, there's some accounts that said it's because her mother didn't like who she was with and felt she was going to blow it on drugs. But bottom line is her mother turned her down, and that's when she wrote the lyrics, the song, God Bless the Child That's Got His Own. And there's actually a children's book by the same name, God Bless the Child, Billie Holiday and Arthur Herzog Jr. But that's when she wrote that. So even her mother in her lowest times also, and maybe some people may consider it tough love, but rejected her at that time. Billie Holiday also worked to own her own story through her music. So this John Hammond, who is supposedly discovered her, was very critical of her singing Strange Fruit and said, hey, you should be singing the happy, kind of stuff. She just went downhill with the melancholy stuff. Well, listen, her legacy endures for a number of reasons, but also because of Strange Fruit. And so just being able to speak her desires and own who she was in song. So let me just share a little bit about this woman's defiance. These are lyrics from the song Tain't Nobody's Business If I Do. And business is B-I-Z-N-E-S-S. She says, there ain't nothing I can do or nothing I can say that folks don't criticize me. But I'm going to do just as I want to anyway. And I don't care if they all despise me. I mean, she's singing this. I mean, just me reading it, I'm shaking my head. I'm like, can none of you do nothing to me, right? There's a whole attitude that comes with it. She said, if I should take a notion to jump into the ocean, ain't nobody's business if I do. If I go to church on Sunday, then just shimmy down on Monday. Ain't nobody's business if I do. If my friend ain't got no money and I say, take all mine, honey, and she's very generous, ain't nobody's business if I do. Yeah. She says, if I give him my last nickel, if I give him my last nickel and it leaves me in a pickle, ain't nobody's business if I do. And then this part, well, I'd rather my man would hit me than to jump right up and quit me. Tain't nobody's business if I do. So she owned who she was, good, bad, and indifferent. This is who I am. Again, do I feel like there's a larger story for us to learn, especially as a Black woman? And with all of these women and resistance stories, I'm going to be focusing on Black women. I know that's what we're doing together at Adesoji here. I think one of the cautionary tales for today is women, sisters, you can't find your worth and your self-value and love in a man or in drugs or in any kind of addiction. Like, you've got to do the work to find that within you as you connect to your creator. That's a takeaway from me, because she kept seeking that love, that stability she didn't have as a child. Her father rejecting her going out and saying, daddy, daddy, when she would see him. And he's like, don't call me that. And she's like, if you don't want me to call you that, you better give me some money so I can pay the rent. And just being raped repeatedly. She was raped by police officers in this process of all this harassment. And who's going to believe you, junkie? Right? But this was a woman who lived very authentically in an era where that was not the thing to do. And you brought up already about her identity, her sexual identity. She loved men, but apparently she wasn't averse to loving women
as well.
And she loved Black, white, and I think everything in between. Of course, we know that her great-grandmother was a slave, was owned by an Irish white man. That's where the Fagin comes from. I think her great-grandmother had 16 children, something like that. So her grandfather was half white, basically. But also just the way when we talk about money, people don't understand this. Remember, she died in 1959. Billie Holiday in her prime
Was
earned
earning
$1,000 to $3,000 a week, $12,000 a month back before the 60s. You know, do that math as to what that. Some of us listening right now do not make. Wait a second. Do not make. Who? How many of you make 12,000 a month? I mean, the average American family does not earn 72,000 in a year in 2025. So think about how much money she had back then. So she talks about, you know, being in her Cadillac and the fur coats and all of this stuff and traveling through Europe and so on and so forth. So Billie also fought for pay equity for Black women and for Black artists as a whole. She used her platform to advocate for racial equality, confronting the systemic inequities within the music industry and asking for credit for her music, asking to be paid at a level that they initially had not been paying people, which reverberates today. So what are the lessons for today that I take from Billie Holiday? We can't control always what life, actually very rarely can we control what life throws at us, but we can control the meaning we attach to it and what we choose to do with that pain and the lessons learned. Billie obviously channeled that into her music. She channeled that into her swag, her sensuality, everything. She found, I mean, so yeah, my hair is burnt. Don't worry, I got a gardenia.
I'm still going to
now.
perform. The show goes on.
Listen, at one point, she was trying to pin in these gardenias. I don't know if she was drunk or high or if she was just, you know, excited about the opportunity or nervous. The pins that she was using to pin her gardenia actually pierced her skull.
God.
And she was bleeding. I think it was her Carnegie yes.
Performance.
And she said, and people didn't know she had on a black dress, so they couldn't even see that there were blood stains on her dress. But she was just a woman who never backed down. And I'm grateful for her life. I am saddened about what she went through and what so many women, boys, girls, Black women in particular, still go through: the loss of innocence at such an early age, the lack of protection from people you love who you believe should protect you, including, like I said, her husbands, her close lovers. And then, of course, just this evil empire, America, always trying to take a good Black person down.
Control.
Yeah.
It was control. For me, the lesson would be, it's difficult being a human in the United States. Yeah, I mean, that's...
Well, you want me to stop crying right now?
No.
What are you doing?
I mean, reading the... You know, when you read one of the books about her, if you read the books written about her, and then contrast it to the one that she co-wrote with William Duffy, you begin to see an element of, this is who I am, and this is what people are projecting onto her.
Yes.
That projection onto her, again, that's what underpinned that statement. They just don't want you to be human.
Yeah.
Because here in, I think it's in, what's it called? I think it's in the last interview. Someone was recounting the fact that anytime she goes out to perform, it's like she constantly looks out in the crowd because she knows certain people are going to be out there and they're after her. So what kind of mindset would you have performing in a paranoid state, knowing that the state, in inverted commas, is watching you? Listening to you.
Waiting, yes.
When she was caught with
You know, the FBI created a whole section of agents, Black agents that they recruited just to be able to infiltrate
just for Billie
and
Holiday,
go after Black artists. Yeah.
I mean, there was the case where she was caught with illicit drugs in California, and Tatula was trying to get her off. Tatula actually called J. Edgar Hoover, and J. Edgar Hoover said, "It's out of my hands." Bearing in mind, that time, drugs was a federal crime. It wasn't a state crime, again. So for me, the lesson would be, we need community, and not just community when things are rosy. Community like in Strange Fruit, in the subsequent lyrics you read. which is people should not be afraid to tell you the truth. Because when they do, now you think immediately they're your enemy. But sometimes the truth stinks, but it's a correctional tool rather than to bear the brunt of what will come down the pike. And it's important, as we do this series, Billie Holiday being the first, as we
Stay
do this
tuned
series
for next week.
Exactly. The next week will be a build up on Billie Holiday, but we'll keep that.
Dressing up as her, though.
No, I'm sure you won't have to dress up as that. But I mean, you did make an effort tonight. Hopefully
Just a little.
Hopefully you didn't burn your hair though.
No, I did. But you know what? I'm honest to God, I did not have any plans to do this until about 3 p.m. this afternoon. I feel like it was Billie Holiday, just like, what, you're just going to like show up and be ordinary? Like, you're talking about me. Do you know who I am?
Exactly.
Like, so yes, I'm wearing a whole cocktail dress and everything and jewelry and all of that for Billie Holiday. But for people who are looking for more information on her, there's so much.
Yeah, oh my God.
I really like this book. It's In Search of Billie Holiday. If You Can't Be Free, Be a Mystery. Because Billie Holiday, even when she got to the height of her fame, because that was after she had already recorded Strange Fruit, I don't know that she ever really felt free. She was running from poverty. She was running from racism. She was running from sexism. She was running from the internal demons that show up when you are assaulted and brutalized in the way that she was. So, yes, this book is by Farah Jasmine Griffin. Interestingly enough, I think this might be the only book written by a Black woman.
Yes.
About Billie Holiday. Men are obsessed with this woman. So you have Billie Holiday, the musician and the myth. John Schwade, author of Alan Lomax. There's so many other books. I had a whole list of them somewhere. You have, of course, Lady Sings the Blues. That is her autobiography.
Which is very important. For me, that's the entry point. Start with her.
Yeah, start with her. Although she lied. She lied about it there, but start with her. It will help you understand who she is. She didn't just
lie. What's the other one?
You know what? She kept the myth and the mystery going.
What's the other one?
There is image where you're like, oh wow, yeah.
There is another book. Hold on.
So there's With Billie that was published in 2005.
Okay.
By Julia Blackburn. That was based on Linda Lipnack-Kuhl's interviews, and that's the one that I'm telling you. They're saying she committed suicide, and her sister is saying no, she was killed. There's Wishing on the Moon, The Life and Times of Billie Holiday, published in 1997 by Donald Clark. A detailed biography that challenges some of the myths, like Leave Her Alone. There's Billie Holiday, the Musician and the Myth. That one was published in 2015.
That one is the go-to one for me.
Well, why? Because that one really focused on the salacious stuff. It was all about
No. He pointed out the salacious stuff that the thing is, they didn't really focus on the message in the music. But obviously they thought the salacious stuff is what people want to read about.
Yeah.
Not the
That's
message.
That's what will sell. Yeah.
And so that guy was very good. The Musician and the Myth is by, what's the name? John Schwez.
Yes.
Brilliant book. That one is brilliant. In fact, I read that twice. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So you have that, and then you also have Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday, Cafe Society, and An Early Cry for Civil Rights, published in 2000 by David Margolick, and it examines the history and impact of her song, Strange Fruit. And then, of course, you have the movies on her, Lady Sings the Blues, that came out in 1972, starring Diana Ross, which, what was so crazy is... oh gosh, Billy D. Williams was the lead male character. And when I watched that, I fell in love with him and Diana Ross's love story. And it was only later as I read about it, I was like, wait a second. First of all, that was a mythical character because what they did was roll a bunch of different people who were in her life, lovers into one. But then they made him seem like such a saint. Oh God, I'm recalling scenes right now. And Louis McKay was an absolute brute to her.
Yeah.
So they used Billy D. Williams, who If you're a woman my age, you were probably in love with Billy D. Williams way back when. He's still fine. Anyway, so that was in 1972, Lady Sings the Blues. Then the United States versus Billie Holiday, which was released in 2021, and that's the one with Andra Day. And this one really focuses on how the FBI went after her. But again, even the FBI agent that they use there that she ends up having an affair with, it's a mishmash of different men in her real life. So they take a lot of liberties in telling these stories. And then there is a documentary just titled Billy that came out in 2019 that, again, was based on the interviews of Linda Kuehl, who I was sharing with
Reference
you.
earlier.
But this woman played with everybody. Bassie, Duke Ellington, Sarah Vaughan. She was just amazing. There are also numerous documentaries on her. Billie Holiday, Sensational Lady in 2001. It's a BBC documentary. Billie Holiday, The Long Night of Lady Day, 1990, as part of the Masters of American Music series. And then Jazz Icons, Billie Holiday Live in 58. A collection of real-life performances showing her vocal abilities, and there are more. So in preparing for today, I actually read 6 books. I mean, I'm watching her interviews. I'm listening to her music. We cannot do her justice.
Yeah, trusty Kindle.
Yeah, we cannot do her justice, but she was an amazing woman who overcame a lot and left us such rich gifts.
As we come to a close, what would be your takeaway from studying this enigma? And I don't use that word lightly.
I'm going to say my personal takeaway is you can't control what other people are going to do. So do you. Just live fully, live authentically, be your full self. Whatever that looks like. In her case, yes, she used drugs. Yes, she loved to be loved. And she chose men who weren't the greatest for her. But she lived loud in every aspect. What she was able to do with that voice, what she was able to do with owning her own style. In a time when I'm sure there were some people who tried to make her sound like somebody else. The iconic style she created for herself. I mean, who else? Who else do we know in that way? You say performer Gardenia, immediately you're coming up with Billie Holiday. So what I take away from it is I've been playing small, and you know what? Hey, just hold on, because I'm about to unleash my inner Billie Holiday, which is, tain't nobody's business if I do. I'm going to do me. And I think that's how she lived. And going back to just what people said about her voice, being able to own her pain. Now, we can say maybe she tried to obscure it with drugs or alcohol, but in her voice, you heard that she was not, and in her lyrics, you see that she wasn't fooling herself. She knew she let people beat her up. She knew that she was making not so great choices, and she owned all of it.
Everyone, yeah.
And that's how I want to live. I want to stop playing so small, to resist in every way, and to understand that the resistance itself is victory. Even if, so they may have felt they won because they had her shackled and they tried to humiliate her even in death. But hello, who knows the names of all those people who arrested her? Where are they recorded in the annals of history, except as a footnote maybe, for trying to hold down this amazing woman?
She said
let's go live bold.
She said it, that your children will sing my song. They will sing and they will play it. And they're doing it right now as we speak. So she won. My takeaway is this. We all have to be truth tellers. Singing Strange Fruit was her way of telling the truth of what was going on. And no matter the pushback, she kept telling the truth. At great cost to her, she told the truth even on her deathbed. And she left them with that note. Your kids will sing and play the song. And they are. So we've come to the end of our first episode. And Sister Aya, I'm greatly indebted to you, as with everybody that has listened and watched us tonight. Again,
Yeah, I couldn't
This
even
is
follow in the chat. I was out trying to like, so we'll go back in and respond. Like, if you
yeah.
love this, leave your comments.
Leave your
Go back,
comments,
listen to
share.
Billy, come back, and of course, subscribe, like, share, download the podcast, all of the above. But we're
Yeah.
going to have fun with this series.
Yes, the audio version would be on your podcast platform of choice by tomorrow evening. Yeah, bearing in mind, hours. So, yeah.
Yeah. But brother
Hours.
Adesoji, I just want to say this really quickly. We were talking about a book that I'm working on, and I'd raised some of these women, and I really appreciate, first of all, the fact that you listened, and then for you to have said, "Hey, how about we share this with the world, telling the stories of our Black mothers, forebears, sisters, contemporaries, all of that." So we're going to have a lot of fun with this. Just learning from who our mothers are and figuring out how we apply those lessons today. So I want to thank you for this opportunity, because I would not have done this on my own. So
Thank you for listening, because one must admit the fact that you're very busy, and adding this to your plate it's
so much fun.
Okay, all right. Some people.
It is.
Some people.
Now, I might need a what they call it, a stronger prescription of glasses, because there's a lot of reading, but I love it. I really love
look at me. I had to go and bring out my special pair. So you can tell that this is because, just reading about her is, you read lots of history, but then from an human angle, and a woman in the midst of the instruments of state. And we're not talking about just any state.
Not just woman, though. Like, she was woman.
Yeah, exactly.
She's
and we're not
strong,
just talking about...
She was feminine, she was sensual, she was all of it.
Exactly.
She owned her whole femininity in every sense of the word.
And she went out swinging.
She did.
That's, for me, that was the most defiant of all. It's like, you know what? I'm dying, but these are my last words.
I just wish she had signed that divorce decree, daggone it. That's the one part that just gets them. I was like, that man did not deserve to live off of her money. But hey.
So,
even that is a lesson. Oh, wait a second. And as an estate planner, listen, y'all, you want to go and meet with an attorney who understands estate planning, so that people that you don't want to have your money don't get their hands on it. Plan ahead. Plan ahead. So, she should have planned ahead.
Speaking of planning ahead, next week, same time, we're going to be having another special woman.
Special woman?
Yes, special woman.
Should we tell?
No.
Okay.
Because if you tell, that's like giving them the present.
Yeah, so the element of surprise.
Element of surprise, yeah. So all of these women that we're going to platform have done their bidding. And like we said in the intro to the podcast itself, if you download that, is either due to their humility or the fact that they have been pushed into relative obscurity is the reason why some of these names are not on the lips of everyone. Some of them you will know the moment you hear them, but some you will not. But then whatever it is they've done in the course of their life has impacts on girls, women, even men. Because the next one we're going to talk about... let me stop.
So I know we're trying to end. I do have to say this because it just occurred to me that I didn't say it. Talking about taking agency, named Eleanor Fagan, and she basically renamed herself. Talking about the importance of fathers in their daughters' lives, she was forever chasing that love of her father, which is why she took on Holiday, her father's name, even though her parents were never married, and it's unclear how much he claimed her. And so there are lessons for us all, not just women, but men. Love should not hurt, y'all. Love should not hurt. And if you can't love a person, then let them go. And if someone can't love you, go. Leave.
That's it.
Leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of leaving, we love you to leave you. But, sorry, that's a play on words.
Yeah.
We'll convene again next time at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, we've got somebody very special,
Somebody very special.
very special for you
We're
next
reading
week.
the books already. Somebody.
Yeah, the books are being, oh my God. So yeah, the books are, oh God. Yeah, the books are being read. And yes, we'll convene again next week. Again, each one bring one.
Yes.
Each one bring one. So we have over 40, 45 at the height of what we're doing earlier. So we expect to see 90 next week.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Why not?
And what can I say? Thank you for all coming and listening. And good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
That is it for this episode of Women and Resistance. Thank you for joining us in amplifying the voices of women who challenged injustice and changed the course of history. Be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. Together, remember, we honor the past, act in the present, and shape the future. Until next time, stay inspired and stay in resistance.